and 2 men and left several others injured. Police used tear gas to disperse the crowd. It's after riots broke out yesterday in the wake of the attack. Members of the community have been gathering this morning close to where the incident happened. A 69-year-old man who was already known to police is in custody in relation to the shooting. This is a developing story and we'll bring you more as we get it.
69 years old. He's a former metro driver. He lived in a flat alone in the center of Paris. His own 90-year-old father says that he's crazy. He collected guns and managed to get some in France where the gun laws are very strict. And he came out of 1 year time in jail only 2 weeks ago, and that was already for attacking a camp of migrants. So all of this points to a racist murder.
That was Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, Daily Telegraph columnist in Paris. Our families driving home for the festive period face travel disruption with severe traffic on the roads due to train strikes today. Travellers heading abroad are also being warned of delays as Border Force officials walk out for a second day. Disruption at UK airports was brought under control yesterday as the military stepped in to replace workers on strike. Meanwhile, Scotland's rail operators warning strikes starting today will severely limit services, with people being advised to only travel if absolutely necessary. Meanwhile, there's disruption to Christmas deliveries for many as postal workers, represented by the Communication Workers Union, continue to walk off the job over pay, jobs and conditions. Royal Mail employees began their industrial action on Friday ahead of Christmas. The acting General Secretary of the CWU told GBNews he hopes the action will help the mail service strive in the future.
Members are very angry about the way they're being treated by Royal Mail. People don't take strike action lightly. People don't want to lose pay. They want to actually be at work serving the customer. But the overwhelming massive feedback from the customer is they support their postie, they support their Royal Mail workers. They understand that the strikes is not just about being greedy, it's about actually having a future service and ensuring this great Royal Mail service that's been there for 500 years can continue to thrive and grow in the future.
At least 19 people are thought to have died as a heavy storm sweeps across parts of the US. A number of fatalities have involved road traffic accidents, including a pile-up in Ohio that reportedly killed at least 2 motorists. Several were also injured. Temperatures plunged as low as -45 degrees in some areas, with around 200 million people under weather warnings. The storm's forecast to develop into what's being described as a bomb cyclone, bringing with it heavy, blinding snow. And back here, forecasters are predicting a white Christmas for the Highlands with unsettled weather for the rest of the UK. The Met Office has put a yellow warning for snow and ice in place for most of the Highlands, running from tomorrow night until 6 p.m. on Boxing Day. Meanwhile, downpours are forecast in most other places over the Christmas weekend. The Environment Agency has issued 66 alerts for possible flooding in England. The rising cost of living has forced more than 32 pubs in England and Wales to close each month this year. Property group Altus says the overall number of pubs has gone down by almost 400 since last year as they struggle with soaring energy costs, rising food prices and a decreasing demand, as well as staffing issues. But the figure was 13% lower than in 2021. The NHS is warning parents about the risks of swallowing toy parts as an increase has seen more children admitted to hospital. The latest data shows the number of children having consumed a small object has doubled over the last 10 years to almost 230. Doctors are concerned about penny-sized batteries that make up part of several household items like festive lights and TV remotes. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. I'll be back with more news at the top of the hour.
Feliz Navidad. Welcome to another GB News Christmas special. And it really is special this time of year. The Christmas period reminds us that we are still a Christian country And regardless of whether we believe or not, this time of year, we're reminded of our roots. Christmas unites people in this country of all faiths and none, as we spend time with friends and loved ones. The country slows down and we reflect on what's important to us. For many, it's a time for family. The Christmas story is centered around the Holy Family, the Blessed Virgin Mary, who in her fiat showed us how to trust in God. Her husband, St. Joseph, the patron saint of fathers and expectant mothers, and of course the Christ child himself, who would eventually die for our sins. The Nativity story is one of mystery, drama, scandal, and hope. It's the greatest story ever told. God became man incarnate, truly God and truly man. But it's not an original story, it's actually a retelling from Genesis, the beginning of time. As St. John tells us in his Gospel, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the Nativity, the Word became flesh. Jesus Christ is the living Word of God. Christmas is also a time for gifts, and God gave the world the gift of his only begotten Son. He gave us his Word so that we may have eternal life. There is no greater gift than that. So let us be thankful and rejoice in this message of hope. In the spirit of presence, may the favours of God's uncommon presence be yours this Christmas. We hope you enjoy the programme. God bless and Merry Christmas. My first guest is the Right Reverend Robert Barron. He is an American Roman Catholic bishop and founder of the Word on Fire Ministries. Bishop Barron, I'd like for you to talk to us about the Christian virtue of hope, because at Christmas, we're talking about the birth of Christ and how that brings people hope.
Well, St. Thomas Aquinas in our tradition says that hope is the longing of the will towards some good that's possible but arduous. It's very interesting there. So we long for certain goods, but some of them are pretty easy to attain. They're possible but not arduous. But hope is ordered toward a good that is possible but difficult to attain. And then the theological virtue of hope is the longing of the will toward God. So God's the supreme good. And arduous, yes, because we can't possibly attain that good on our own. If our fallen wills are the problem, our wills are not the solution. We can't will our way to God. And so we hope, we long for this arduous good of attaining God, and we're relying upon the power of God. So it's a kind of decentering of the ego. I think all the theological virtues have that effect. They decenter the ego. My life's not about me anymore. It's not about my self-assertion. It's about ordering my life toward God and trusting that God can bring me to this good that I can't possibly attain myself. I think that's the theological virtue of hope.
Would you say there's an increased appetite for the message of hope? And is that what your apostolate is centered on?
I think hope is always something that is very deep in the human heart, because we all know, implicitly or explicitly, that we cannot become happy through our own efforts, that no worldly good can satisfy the longing of the heart. It's the central, Calvin, it's the central tension and drama of human life. Much of poetry and art and literature comes from that we have an orientation toward a good that we can't possibly attain on our own. And so there's that decentering process. And so I would say it's behind every great work of art. It's behind every great human aspiration is something like hope. Because if life is just nothing but grim finality and grim darkness, why would you bother producing a work of art? So even someone that says, look, I'm an atheist, but yet they produce works of art, that's coming from some very deep place in us. That's the longing for a fulfillment that we cannot attain on our own. And to live in that paradoxical space, that's the space of hope. And it's where deep down we all want to live and all need to live.
We've seen a number of high-profile conversions to Catholicism this year. Shia LaBeouf was one of them. He talked about forgiveness in his interview with you. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
That's part of the breakthrough of grace in his case, I think, was feeling forgiven, despite what he admitted were all sorts of sins and dysfunction in his life. But through the mediation of some wonderful people, and I knew them personally, these Capuchin friars out in California, through the mediation of those good brothers, he found the divine forgiveness. And that's what salvation consists in, allowing ourselves to be found. That's something I talk about a lot, that you talk about too, I think, is the Bible. It's not the story of our quest for God. I mean, that's in all the spirituality of the world, and every book on the shelf in the bookstores is about the human quest for God. The Bible is not about that. It is not about our quest for God. It's God relentlessly coming after us, seeking us. And so the virtue of hope, if you want, is that just the opening of the heart to allow oneself to be forgiven. Accepting the fact that we've been accepted, even though we're unacceptable. That might be a way to state that. And I do think you're right that Shia LaBeouf found that. And that's what salvation really consists of.
I think a lot of younger people can relate to that message. And it seems to me that beauty is attracting people to the church. We're filming in one of the most beautiful churches in the country. And of course, the Transcendental's beauty in particular is supposed to direct our gaze to something greater than ourselves, to direct our gaze towards God. Is that not the case?
All three function that way, truth and the good and beauty. But I think especially today, the beautiful has a special power, because we're resistant to true and good. We're very postmodern, very relativistic, and so we tend to be, hey, don't tell me what to think or what to do. But the beautiful just kind of shines. There it is. Just look at that Van Gogh picture. Just look at the Sainte Chapelle, and it awakens that longing. The wings begin to expand. It's like you can't help it. And so the number of people who have been converted over the centuries by beautiful places and things, I think is very interesting. A place like Chartres Cathedral, which is my favorite location on planet Earth, I think. The evangelical power of a place like that, because it's God beginning the awakening of the soul. And that's where hope comes in again too. Hope is an ordering toward this arduous good that we can't attain. The arduous good in question being the transcendent union with God. And so beauty is indeed tied to hope.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for joining us. Merry Christmas. That was Bishop Barron. My next guest is Dr. Gavin Ashenden, a Roman Catholic convert, former chaplain to Her late Majesty the Queen. Dr. Ashenden, we have a war in Europe. Politics is in turmoil. We're in the midst of a cost of living crisis. A lot of people aren't necessarily feeling very hopeful right now. A lot of people aren't even Christian. Why should they feel hopeful at Christmas?
Well, I think there are two stories going on, aren't there? There's always a public and international and social story. And to tell you the truth, for most of history, it's been pretty bleak. Something gets into human beings that makes them pretty aggressive with one another. But there's a more intimate and human story. And the wonderful thing about Christmas is that our own personal story can get changed. It gets changed because in asking where we came from, we discover God made us, God loves us, God keeps us, and God wants to change our lives. So the real hope is that our lives get touched and changed, and they can be.
Also, a lot of people don't go to church normally on a Sunday. why should they turn up to church, especially for Christmas?
Well, it's a bit, the image I always have of human beings is rather a silly one, but it's like a plug outside a socket. We all live off electricity anyway, so you need to plug yourself into the source of the power and the energy. And surprisingly enough, that's what churches are. They're the socket. We go there to attach ourselves to God, to allow God to put part of himself into us. You can do it a bit at home, and it's not wholly unsuccessful, but you might as well go where the juice is most powerful.
I like the analogy. Right now, we're in one of the most beautiful churches in the country, famous for the traditional Latin Mass. A lot of young people seem to be attracted to traditional Christian worship and traditional Latin Masses. Why do you think that might be?
Well, I think it's because for about between 50 and 100 years, it's been a slow cultural change. We've been dumbing down. Human beings have two capacities inside. We like both intimacy and awe. And for quite a long time, the 19th century particularly, was a period of awe, and people got fed up with it, and they wanted intimacy. And so therapy, entertainment, romantic love, that's all the stuff of intimacy. But a bit like sugar, you can get a bit too much of it and grow fat. And people have begun to realize they're missing awe. They want, and I think that's where God comes in. God comes both as intimacy, because Jesus, no aspect of God is more intimate than Jesus, but he comes as awe as well. And the great danger with religion is it can turn into entertainment. So people are quite rightly suspicious of that, and they need a bit of awe in their life. And somewhere like this, and particularly in the Latin Mass, and I have to say the Catholic Church, that's where it's to be found at its highest octane.
Now, the Queen died this year, and in her last address, she spoke about her bedrock of faith and how that was important to her. Do you think it's important for us to remember and recognize our Christian roots as a nation?
It's a very complicated question, because we live poised between the possibility of a presidency and a monarchy. And one of the things that monarchy does is it keeps the presidents out. And that's important because they deal in only power. And the interesting thing about a monarchy is it's riddled with Christianity. Which means it's riddled with hope and love and forgiveness and compassion as part of its DNA. It would be a very odd thing indeed if a monarch didn't have Christian faith. With Christian faith, it makes sense of the whole thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Queen was so deeply loved and revered. It was an intuitive thing as much as an aesthetic thing and a political thing. It's absolutely essential that the monarch in this country has a Christian faith in order to validate the concept of monarchy.
Well, that leads me to the next question, which was how important was faith to Her Majesty, and how important is it to the King?
She was taught to pray by her parents. All parents teach your children to pray. They need it. It's a way of giving them a firm foundation. Her life, too, experienced a number of very serious crises. There was one point, I'm sure everyone remembers, when the monarchy nearly fell apart under her leadership. You can't take anything for granted. But the way in which she prayed to God, related to God, experienced God. She had a great relationship with Dr. Billy Graham, who came across to evangelize the English in the 1970s, much to their surprise and horror. She was very switched on with God. It was one of the reasons, I think, why her eyes twinkled and she smiled so broadly, and people responded by loving her. It was very important. You can see when someone's plugged into God. They twinkle.
Amen. Thank you very much.
The birth of Jesus foretold. And in the 6th month the angel Gabriel was sent from God unto a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin espoused to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mary. And the angel came unto her and said, Hail, thou that art highly favoured, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women. And when she saw him, she was troubled at his saying, and cast in her mind what manner of salutation this should be. And the angel said unto her, Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favour with God. And behold, you shalt conceive in thy womb, and bring forth a son, and shalt his name be Jesus.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mixed with plenty of sunny weather towards the southeast and more changeable elsewhere. Let's take a look at the details. Starting off in Scotland, here the earlier rain and hill snow will become confined to the Northern Isles. Heavy showery rain in the west, best of any sunshine in the east. Across Northern Ireland, there will be plenty of outbreaks of showery rain. These could turn heavy and perhaps thundery later on, with hail possible. Whilst the afternoon will start dry and bright in the northwest of England, a spell of heavy rain is likely later, with hail and lightning for some. It will be a similar story for much of Wales. We can expect some fine weather for a time before a band of rain pushes through, likely turning thundery at times. Meanwhile, in the East Midlands, the weather should stay fine through the afternoon, with plenty of winter sunshine. Perhaps not feeling as mild as during recent days, with highs of around 9 Celsius. It's a similar picture as we look across East Anglia. Here too, we can expect a dry and mostly sunny afternoon. Temperatures may just about scrape into double digits. Somewhat cloudier towards the south coast, with some showers pushing through, though these should be relatively few and far between. It will be milder here, with highs of around 12 Celsius. A band of intense showery rain will push eastwards this evening, bringing the risk of hail and thunder. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back. My next guest is John Milbank, Emeritus Professor of Theology and Religious Studies at the University of Nottingham. John Milbank, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too.
I'd like to talk to you about Santa Claus, or Father Christmas, or Saint Nicholas.
Of course, one should.
Can you give me a bit of his background? Who is the Saint Nicholas?
Well, St. Nicholas was Bishop of Myra in the 3rd to 4th centuries. And he's well known for many remarkable miracles, including raising children from the dead, and notably giving in secret dowries to 3 girls who were otherwise going to go into prostitution. So that's a source of him being linked with gift giving and his eventual evolution via Dutch folklore into Santa Claus.
Right, and we'll get to the gift giving and,
yes,
and the European folklore, but to a lot of people, Santa Claus is a make-believe figure, something we tell our children to give them a bit of hope and a bit of magic. Is there anything wrong with that?
Absolutely nothing wrong with that whatsoever. On the contrary, I would argue that it's not so much that we're deceiving children as that we're telling children the truth, that these presents derive really from above. We're only mediators. They come from this kind of semi-divine or saint-like figure who stands for heaven. So what we're really telling ourselves is that childhood and innocence and this reception of gifts from a secret, unknown source is the reality. And this completely fits with the Christian story, I think.
I quite like that angle because in my monologue I talked about gifts being the grace from God, but you're talking about it being the invocation of the saints. I quite like that.
Yes, no, I mean heaven in general, and in a sense it is the children that are the gifts and are linked with the heavenly, with the ancestors, with saints, with God. And you can say that after they are initiated, they then know that Father Christmas isn't real. But in a way, they then discover a greater reality of God. But when they're babies and innocent, they know it in a much more direct way. And Jesus himself became a baby. So obviously Jesus would have believed in Father Christmas. You might put it that way. I mean, I think it's also important to realize that Father Christmas is a hybrid figure. He is St. Nicholas, but he's also derived from a Lord of Misrule figure who stands for symbolically for Christmas as such. And again, you might say that's very pagan, but I think actually it's the greatest misrule, the greatest disturbance of all that, God has become a baby and abolished these distinctions between us, including the barrier between adult and children. I think people who, worry that it's really pagan or say, it's really pagan, are completely wrong. And it's much more the pagan points to the Christian. And you might say, it was always a festival about the victory of light over dark in the middle of winter. But Christianity is adding something more. It's saying there's something good about the dark, that God creates, he descends into creation, he descends into darkness, into being a baby, he embraces human suffering. And so the message is that kind of like out of the seed of darkness itself comes the light.
Right, and a lot of people talk about this pagan aspect of Christmas, saying that it's actually just a winter solstice celebration.
Yeah, well, that's garbage, and in fact, it's inherently linked, to the date of the conception of Christ, and that may have come first. But of course, the church knew what they were doing. They knew it merged with the winter solstice. And one can see that as typological. It's perfectly appropriate to, this is part of the mystery and the symbolism within nature that, in a fallen world, everything dies, but is then reborn. So, we should embrace all that nature symbolism. People always did. They always had boughs of holly. It's not true that the Victorians invented Christmas. They reinvented it, but it had always been a family festival, on and off, a matter of a radical exchange of gifts, a sense that this is a time when everything is gift. Everything is generosity. And that's at the very core of this Christian, meaning of Christmas. If you like, the incarnation is about integrity. It's about the unity of spirit and matter, and it's about something rising from below as much as something coming from above. So the more Christian you are, the more pagan you are, as I think Chesterton must have said,
John Milbank, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The shepherds and the angels. And they were in the same country, shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be a sign to all people. For unto you is born this day, in the city of David a Saviour, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. Ye shall find the babe wrapped in the swaddling clothes, lying in the manger.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens,
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory.
twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. My next guest is Rod Dreher, American writer and senior editor of the American Conservative magazine. Merry Christmas, Rod.
Thank you, Colin. Merry Christmas to you as well.
You are an Orthodox Christian convert. In what ways do you celebrate Christmas differently now to what you did before?
Orthodox Christians follow a fast, a fairly strict fast in the weeks leading up to the Nativity. So from mid-November, we have been fasting from meat and fasting from dairy. This is such an important thing for me spiritually, because it taught me that in order to prepare for the birth of Christ and the joy of the birth of Christ, we needed to be waiting with sacrifice. Before, I celebrated Christmas like everybody else does in my culture. You know, it's a whole month of feasting on candies and cakes and hot chocolate, things like that. And that's all fine. But when I became Orthodox and suddenly had to spend the month of December fasting, it made the joy of Christmas and the 12 days of Christmas afterwards, all that much more intense and meaningful. It helped me understand that there is a reason that the Christmas is a feast. You can't really understand the meaning of the feast without having fasted first. Learning how to celebrate it in the traditional way, and perhaps Anglicans do this as well, really opened up my heart and my mind to the real beauty of Christmas, and beyond the beauty, the deep meaning of Christmas and of the sacred time of Christmas. You know, Orthodox Christians, like traditional Christians in other liturgical churches, we consecrate and hallow time in a special way, a way that has been forgotten in this post-Christian culture. It's a really countercultural thing, and it has helped me so much in my own walk with Christ to learn how to do this, and to learn how, frankly, how to observe the season as our ancestors from generations upon generations ago did.
I like the idea of demonstrating sacred time at Christmas. Are there any other intricacies into how you celebrate Christmas as a family or celebrate it personally?
Well, Calvin, this year is going to be a pretty tragic Christmas for me. I'm sorry to say that earlier this year, my wife filed for divorce, and it's a painful thing. I'm now living in Europe. My family is on the other side of the ocean. My older son is going to fly over to spend Christmas with me. And we are going to be meditating on loss, frankly. My son and I will be surrounded by friends, thank God, good Christian friends. We will go to church, but we will also hold fast to the truth that Christ is here, Christ is born, Christ must be glorified in our lives. And we will pray also for a better year to come. I should say also, Calvin, that this year has taught me, this year of loss has taught me the meaning of suffering, and that for all Christians, suffering is part of our lives. It's not something to be afraid of, certainly not something to be sought, but God is present with us even as we suffer. When I went to Bethlehem earlier this year, I was also shown something that most pilgrims to Bethlehem don't get to see. I was taken into a Greek Orthodox monastery and shown the bones of the Holy Innocents, the children massacred by King Herod, who wanted to kill the Christ child. The Christ child was a threat to his power. I asked the woman showing me this, I said, how do we know these are the Holy Innocents' bones? And she said that they were discovered when St. Helena came there in the 4th century. So whether they're the bones of the Holy Innocents or not, they're the bones of children, and they help us understand that even joy is not unmixed. It also comes with great suffering. My son and I are living through that this year with the dissolution of our family. But it doesn't dim the joy, but rather it deepens it and makes it more intense. And I am not giving up in any way on the joy of Christmas. It's just going to have to be celebrated in a different way this year. And I know a lot of your viewers too, to be honest, are suffering through hard times. I want to say to them, I know what this is like, but hold fast to Jesus Christ. Our Lord is with us. He came to us in the dead of winter, and he will be with us forever.
I think that perfectly encapsulates Christmas. We go through trials and tribulations in life, suffering, but the message of Christmas is one of hope in that Christ is with us throughout all of that suffering, isn't he? Amen and Merry Christmas.
The birth of Jesus. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And all went to be taxed, everyone into his own city. And Joseph went to be taxed. He went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. And so it was, that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn.
All my heart this night rejoices, as I hear far and near sweetest angel voices. Christ is born, their choirs are singing, till the air everywhere now with joy is ringing. Hark a voice from yonder manger, soft and sweet, doth entreat, flee from woe and danger. Brethren, come from what doth grieve you. You are freed, all you need, I will surely give you. Come then, let us hasten yonder. Here let all, great and small, kneeling awe and wonder, love him who with love is yearning. Hail the star that from far bright with hope is burning. Thee, dear Lord, with thee doth cherish, live to thee, and with thee dying shall not perish, but shall dwell with thee forever, far on high in the joy that can alter never.
My next guest is Sir Desmond Swayne, Conservative politician and Anglican. Sir Desmond, you became somewhat of a hero during the lockdowns. Did your faith impact your politics and your decisions at the time?
I think so. I think they inform my politics at all times, in that, I have certain values which I believe are biblically based. I don't test particular political decisions for theological soundness. It's just that I have values which I believe are biblically based, and I will pursue issues and causes and behave in a certain way because I have those views. In terms of lockdown, I felt very strongly that people should not be prevented from having the sacraments of the church and be able to go to church and be able to exercise individual liberty and make an assessment for themselves as to what risks they were prepared to take.
Personal responsibility, what an old-fashioned thought. You mentioned the importance of individual liberty, and that was one of your calls to campaign throughout the lockdowns and throughout the pandemic, but people seem to use it as a derogatory term these days. Why do you think that might be?
Well, I think certainly in the sense of lockdown, there's a collective good and a collective view. And if your liberty is out spreading the disease, then I can understand people saying, well, your liberty is less important than the common good. And I think there's a question of balance to be had. If I thought that my liberties were making the situation worse and spreading the disease, then I would have taken a different view. I think that I was underwhelmed by the medical evidence and the case for lockdown that was put to us. I think it was a disaster. I think it did vastly more harm than it would otherwise have done. But hey, if the disease had been killing young people, had been killing children, I might have taken a different view. If it's just the way that things came about and fell out. Ultimately, I would always prize individual liberty over the collective good, but clearly there has to be some balance between those two.
And we now know that you are on the right side of this in terms of the scientific data backs your argument. How are you showing forgiveness to people who were wrong and demonized you at the time?
Well, frankly, it's water off a duck's back. The reality is, if you're in politics, you have to have a thick skin because people will always put the worst possible interpretation on your actions and denounce you for all sorts of things that you've not done or not said. I haven't been. I know that some politicians keep a little notebook of all the people they need to get back at, but I'm immune from that. I'm a Christian. I believe in forgiveness.
Your party seems to be split at the moment between liberal conservatives and social conservatives. Where would you fall within that bracket?
Well, I've moved between the two seamlessly and been in one camp for some time and then the other and moved back again. There's a difficulty there in the sense that the Conservative Party has a tradition for order and tradition itself, and equally something that we imported largely from the Whigs and from the National Liberals, a much more liberal attitude. And I'm afraid, I'm probably like most colleagues, it's difficult to pin me down. I move between the two.
Right. The reason I ask is because I think within the church we're seeing younger people more attracted to tradition, such as the beautiful setting we're filming in today. And I think we might be seeing a similar thing in politics, in that young people seem to be attracted more to the social conservative side of things and the traditional values. Are you seeing this?
I've certainly found in this last year, I think I've done 11 university visits this year, and certainly I found that there's a strong element of that social conservatism, but I wouldn't overstate it. I think that certainly looking at my own children, they have much more liberal values, and I'm comfortable with that. My own taste, certainly in religion, is for the more traditional. I prefer the prayer book than the modern services, and I'm sure it doesn't matter to the Almighty, but it does matter to me.
Well, you came to our college, St. Stephen's House. I won't ask you where we fell on the social divide. In terms of Christmas, where do you get hope?
Those that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall run and not grow weary. It's only in a belief in an eternal power outside yourself that informs you with the hope that things will get better. But ultimately, your salvation is in the hands of God, and that provides a reassurance which cannot exist for people who do not believe that, and they have a much more weary existence simply because they don't have that hope to hold on to. Now, Marx called it an opiate, and we need this opiate just to get us through the misery of this life. But that doesn't constitute, it may in certain respects be true, but during a night of pain you long for the dawn, that's no disproof that the dawn is not going to come.
The visit of the wise men. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, and said, Go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star, which they saw in the east, went down before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way.
St. Philip Neri, Oro pro nobis. I'm standing in front of St. Philip's altar here, and St. Philip founded the Congregation of the Oratory. We at GB News would like to thank the London Oratory for hosting us for this Christmas special. And of course, we'd like to thank you for joining us this year. Have a very Merry Christmas, and God bless.
Angels we have heard on high, singing sweetly o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Gloria in excelsis Deo, Gloria in excelsis Deo. Shepherds, by this jubilee, by your rapturous strain along, what the gladsome tidings be, which inspire heavenly song. Gloria in excelsis Deo, Gloria in excelsis Deo. Come to Bethlehem and see him whose birth the ages sing. Come adore on bended knee Christ the Lord, the newborn King. Gloria in excelsis Deo, Gloria in excelsis Deo. See him in a manger laid, to the choirs of angels praise. Mary, Joseph, lend your aid, while our hearts in love we raise. Gloria in excelsis Deo, Gloria in excelsis Deo.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mixed with plenty of sunny weather towards the southeast and more changeable elsewhere. Let's take a look at the details. Starting off in Scotland, here the earlier rain and hill snow will become confined to the Northern Isles. Heavy showery rain in the west, best of any sunshine in the east. Across Northern Ireland, there will be plenty of outbreaks of showery rain. These could turn heavy and perhaps thundery later on, with hail possible. Whilst the afternoon will start dry and bright in the northwest of England, a spell of heavy rain is likely later, with hail and lightning for some. It will be a similar story for much of Wales. We can expect some fine weather for a time before a band of rain pushes through, likely turning thundery at times. Meanwhile, in the East Midlands, the weather should stay fine through the afternoon, with plenty of winter sunshine. Perhaps not feeling as mild as during recent days, with highs of around 9 Celsius. It's a similar picture as we look across East Anglia. Here too, we can expect a dry and mostly sunny afternoon. Temperatures may just about scrape into double digits. Somewhat cloudier towards the south coast, with some showers pushing through, though these should be relatively few and far between. It will be milder here, with highs of around 12 Celsius. A band of intense, showery rain will push eastwards this evening, bringing the risk of hail and thunder. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello, good afternoon. I know earlier than Bill. Yes, it's 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Aquia. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next 3 hours, yes, it is 3 in the show, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled.